Let's go ahead and prop up on the screen and we will roll. Tyler Robinson confessed to murdering Charlie Kirk in a chilling text exchange with his trans lover hours after allegedly carrying out the assassination, and left him a hidden note confessing to the plot, prosecutors said. They have this guy dead to rights, and there's no reason whatsoever that they should go easy on the lover. There's no way that the lover doesn't know. There's just, in my opinion. So these people should all be tried as accomplices. Everybody who knew, everybody who is likely to have known, they should all, in my opinion, be tried as accomplices. Now, sadly, I will point this out to you. As I understand the law in Utah, you get to choose what your method of execution will be. So there's a lot of talk about firing squad because it's appropriate, but regrettably, he can choose to go to sleep, have a nice little nap, and just not wake up from it. And that would be horrific. So as far as I'm concerned, there should be some movement somehow, somewhere. I don't know if it's got to be the state government decides, okay, well, we're going to ban lethal injection for the next so many months and only going to use rifle. That's it. Less than 3 hours after the September 10 killing, the 22-year-old told his live-in partner, Lance's Twiggs off, that he had been planning the killing for a week. A week? No. Bravo Sierra. No. A week. According to an indictment filed yesterday, you would not be able to function. Let's think about it this way. You can have a crime of passion. That happens in the moment, right? You know, the guy comes home and the wife is cheating on him and the other guy's there and the guy loses it. And he takes a baseball bat and he goes to work on him a little bit. You know, he gives him the treatment. He gives him the Saddam Hussein treatment they used to give the soccer players over there when they didn't win when they were abroad. He gives them the treatment. And there ain't no leaving the treatment. And then he goes to court and they say, well, you know, he was temporarily like out of his mind. So you can have this moment of passion that the law understands. But then you also have like the first degree, the planning. How am I going to do this? And to get to the point where you're going to have the planning, which potentially could be, the finer details a week or more out of the final bits of planning. To get to that point, it's a lot of thinking. It's a lot of, I could do it like this. It's a lot of, so all of that is part of the overall scheme of carrying out, in this case, an assassination. So I don't believe it for the reason he's saying that, saying to Lance's Twiggs off that, hey, I just thought I would do this last week, is because he's, in my opinion, he's giving cover to all of these other conspirators, these co-conspirators in the assassination of Charlie Kirk, which, by the way, Steve Bannon had, I don't like him, but he had a guy on, and don't know the truth of this yet, and maybe, more will come out, but he had a guest on who was there, who was approaching the event when Charlie Kirk was assassinated. And this guy, hears the sound, doesn't know what it is. And he can see people not down in the bowl area yet, but he can see other ones at elevated positions, all ducking, and looking around. And so he comes walking up to the group that isn't ducking. And he walks up to this group, and as he walks up to them, he then sees people crawling along the yard in the bowl and running for their lives. And he says to this group, what happened? And they said, the MFing right-wingers got what they deserved. And they're all running for their lives like rats and something like this. You'll have to go check out Bannon's show. Again, I don't know if how much of this is true. Well, these people who, for some reason, didn't dive for their safety were all there with anti-white flags. They had signage for anti-whiteism of the particular vein that Lance's Twiggs off and Tyler, that they were all heavily involved in. So that's kind of curious. If that's true, if there's footage of this, and they did show a little bit of footage. So if there's more footage of this group and they're just watching it all play out, that's evidence in and of itself that they knew. They knew to some degree, in my opinion, that there was going to be murder that day and that they were safe. That's why they didn't dive for it. I mean, just think to yourself, if you went to an event, maybe there is the LGBTQ version of Charlie Kirk, and he, she, they, Sir Rexosaurus comes out into this heavily populated area to have the back and forth, and you are there because you're going to debate he, she, they, Sir Rexosaurus, and a shot rings out. You are going to throw yourself on the ground. You're not going to be thinking, well, they're finally getting what they deserve. You know, when it comes to firearms, well, the right to self-defense, when it comes to firearms in general, though, you think about when right-wingers or conservatives, when they're asked, what are guns for? Just what are they for? And there's this like debate. Is it for protecting yourself, or is it for preventing tyranny? I've always been most irritated by the argument because it's the same thing. It's the right to self-defense. That's what the Second Amendment is. It's the right to self-defense. And so that's defense against somebody breaking in, somebody coming to rape you. It's defense against a tyrannical government. The founding fathers weren't only thinking that the government could harm the population. Of course, they were also thinking about other humans, wild animals, situations in the future that they couldn't predict. So it was, if you were going to say that you were handed down inalienable rights, such as life from a creator, then of course you've got to say that you can defend your life. Of course, it's yours. The creator gave it to you. If that's going to be your mentality. But you ask these people and you say, what are the guns for? And sometimes you'll even get tossed in there, oh, they're for hunting and sport shooting. And it's just a particular part of the culture. And so therefore guns. Of course, it's never been about guns. That's just the tool at the acme, at the apex of self-defense, because it equalizes everyone. If a new tool came out, by the way, if a new tool came out that somehow negated firearms, then that would have to be the tool. If firearms became the equivalent of a switchblade, then that could not be used in self-defense on a broad scale, because everybody else would just bring the new tool to the conversation. So you have this kind of argument among the right-wingers, conservatives. What are guns for? On the harder core anti-whites, or maybe we'll just say the left anti-whites, they tell you that guns are for killing. And that's exactly what they use them for. Assassinating, murdering, raping, robbing. That's what they use guns for. That's why it makes sense to them. Well, we use them for murdering and raping, and you might use them for sports. You might go out there in a bright orange jacket out there to go do some hunting with your father, grandfather, and uncles and great uncles. You might go out there, but we use it for raping. That's why their argument is always based in that terminology. Twiggs then found a note from Robinson reading, I had the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk, and I'm going to take it. Robinson was charged Tuesday with aggravated murder, felony discharge of a firearm, causing serious bodily injury, and obstruction of justice. 3 of the 7 total counts. So here you have some of their back and forth. Drop what you're doing and look under the keyboard. What? You're joking, right? Whatever. The exchange alleges that Twiggs knew all about Tyler's alleged role in the assassination more than 24 hours before he was caught. Twiggs, whom authorities described as a male transitioning to female, immediately texted Robinson asking if it was some kind of sick joke. That's pretty ripe, isn't it? Sick. Is this some kind of a sick joke? Says you finish the sentence. Tyler Robinson faces 7 guns. He's a perfectly normal human being and probably the nicest. Although his family says he had Lance's Twiggs says, family says, a mad alcoholic, using drugs. At least that's being reported right now. Candace Owens and some others. May be true, maybe not true. Subject to later reporting. When Twiggs asked Robinson if he was the one who killed Kirk, Robinson texted, I'm sorry. So there's the rifle, the Mauser. Worried my old man would do if I didn't bring back Grandpa's rifle. How the F will I explain this? So there you have, the totally perfect Lance's Twiggs who I believe firmly knew all about the assassination. But we really want to talk today about George Zinn. There's a lot of conversation going on about Robinson and Twiggs and a lot of information out there. But all you're getting about Zinn is, and if you remember, this is the guy, and you can see his hideous face on the screen. This was the guy who was in the front row, and he leapt to his feet after Kirk's assassination and shouted that he had done it. And shoot him, kill him now. Kill me, he was yelling. Shoot me. And he kept yelling that all the way out to the police cars. And of course, he got a lot of attention. A lot of people turned their attention. And as you can see with this headline, the topic of conversation, not a surprise for 2 reasons, that Zinn would be into child pornography. Just another anti-white, another day in anti-whiteism in the world of anti-whites. Child pornography, sure. And what else? That they're going to focus on just this child pornography aspect of it. But there's a more important lesson to be drawn from George Zinn. The conversation also about did he have prior knowledge? How did he work into? He must have, right? He must have. And he must have been involved in some sort of conspiracy because so much attention was drawn to him in the moments immediately after Kirk's assassination. Could Robinson have been caught at the scene if the law enforcement had not been directed to George Zinn? Possibly, because they would have been fanning out in every direction, looking for the assassin. The elderly rabble-rouser anti-white garbage, who allegedly hindered Utah authorities' response after Charlie Kirk was fatally shot, is now accused of keeping graphic sexual photos of children on his phone, according to law enforcement. He was initially arrested, you all remember, taken downtown. They determined that he had nothing actually to do with the assassination, and they let him go. But then they decided, you know what, we're going to go back and we're going to arrest him. We're going to charge him for still just disrupting the event. He said he was having some sort of a medical condition. They took him to the hospital. While they were at the hospital, they wanted to look at the phone. He openly told them, I'd rather you not, because all the kiddie porn that I look, it's all over the phone. And of course, the police are like, well, we're looking at it now. So of course, there are going to be charges related to that. 71 was charged with 4 counts of sexual exploitation of a minor Monday after investigators found more than 20 images of kids as young as 5 freaking years old. These people you can't say that they're sick on YouTube. They are healthy. They are completely normal. There are some people out there that might consider that abnormal. But as far as I'm concerned, there are good people in that crowd, just like every other. Ear is against the door. At least partially naked and posing in sexual ways. Zinn admitted that he gets sexual gratification from viewing child porn. And his specific target is 5 to 12. All right. Well, what's really important about this guy, I guess one other thing to know is that he's seemingly crazy as all get out. He shows up at events all the time, causing disruption from an anti-white perspective all the time. But what is it that really we need to take away? Anti-whiteism is a unifying ideology. And anti-whites work in concert even when they don't have a central master. So many of the error made in the resistance to our victimization across the West is a consequence of midwittery, rank midwittery, to which many vegetables, many midget wits out there, they circle around and they just can't lap up enough of. They just can't. It's like dung beetles just waiting for the manna to fall from heaven off the cow's ass. They're just like, please drop some more of the goodies upon us. That's a consequence of midwittery. And it's possible, it happens, that people who are brighter than that are blinded by tradition, are blinded by the inability to think laterally, or by so many different ways. And they come to these conclusions. You can see it all day long. Everywhere you go, the conversation about who are the masters, who are the orchestrators, who is the cabal. There has to be some sort of global elite. Never call the anti-white oligarchs that. But there has to be. There just must be. And the reason why these people think that is because they're too fucking dumb to know that there doesn't have to be. There absolutely doesn't have to be. You take a animal, the human animal, and it is programmable with ideas. And once programmed with ideas, whatever the context might be, you will get a set of outcomes. The programmers are all of the programmed. They are all contributing to the ideology. So this infernal, just infested, sickening, and not only that, notion that there has to be some sort of leadership engenders depression, engenders black-pilled emotions. Because when you begin attributing everything to these omniscient, omnipotent, whether it's the Jews, whether it is the Catholics, whether it is kind of a big thing back in the day, the fight between it's the Jesuits, it's the Jews, and I'm like, you guys are both idiots. When you submit to that stupidity, you disempower yourself. You come to the conclusion that anybody who can know all things and do all things and can make assassinations happen like this and get away and always leave a patsy perfectly in the place, naturally you come to the conclusion of depression, that nothing can be done. And I've said it many times before. The smartest thing that devious anti-whites can do is to engender more of that thinking in the white population. You don't want a white population that is seeing the world as something that we can change. You want the white population thinking there are mortal gods that are causing all of this to happen. We see it all the time in this community. People come in, sometimes they stay for a while and they pass right out because they begin entertaining this Jew-spurging notions, or this otherwise, this hidden hand, if you will, notion. They set the economy like this. They do the industry like that. They do immigration like this over here. Some like cigar smoking and who knows what kind of a castle. Maybe it's like an Elysium hell, and they literally have some sort of floating nothingness out there that they're orchestrating it all from. If you entertain that notion, you surrender, and that's the purpose of it. And of course, the average folks who maybe aren't even being subjected to ideology that's intended to do that, when they come into the picture and they bring with them their rank midwittery, this is a conclusion that they come to on their own as well. Let me see here. Anti-whiteism, 100% unifying ideology. Yeah, if you think that, so you'll see if somebody is in this community or used to be in this community or is orbiting further and further away from this community and they're getting depressed, they're getting down and out, it's because they've started making their bed with garbage Jewsburgs again. And why is a Jewsburg garbage? In my opinion, not because at least not first, because they are blanketing every person born Jewish as an anti-white. No, the reason they're garbage, first and foremost, for me, is that everything they're prescribing, all of their assessments are pernicious for the white race. They undermine us. And so, indeed, they are anti-white. At the end of the day, everything that they're arguing, including Fuentes, everything that they're arguing is anti-white. They are occupying people with ideas and notions that they cannot effect any change over. And then they say, oh, well, you've got to know to be able to do something. But what are you doing? Nothing. Nothing. So at the final analysis, these people are all anti-white. And they deserve what happens to them. But white children don't. Good white people like are in this community, we don't deserve it. They might deserve it, but we don't. And we don't allow this kind of thinking because this kind of thinking is cancer. It is cancer. It is AIDS to the white race. And literally, as I mentioned just last week, it just like AIDS gets into the T cell of the immune system and begins reproducing itself, these anti-non-white people, they get into different groups and then they begin producing their own kind in those groups and destroy every single one of those groups. So we don't allow it at all because it's harmful to the white race. So there isn't a cabal sitting on top of the world. And anybody telling you that is an idiot, is a liar, wants you to be harmed, wants you not to resist, wants to just wait around. In most cases, they're going to just be idiots. Very often they feign as intellectuals. Very often they'll read themselves up on the most talked about philosophers or socio-political thinkers or whatever it might be, economists. But in the final analysis, they're idiots. Because what they are arguing is incapacitating, is weakening, is vitiating the white race, Western kind. So what's actually happening then? Well, certainly there are powerful anti-whites, just like there are anti-whites with no power at all levels in all countries. And there are moments when a group of anti-whites can get together for some anti-white purpose, and then they go their separate ways. So what do we then have to combat? It speaks directly to these anti-white terror cells that are now being talked about by the federal government across the United States. And of course, they're going to be across Western civilization. Heather McDonald, absolutely right. You're not going to be able to just excise these from the society and then it's all better. Everything is fine because the petri dish, the anti-whiteism that creates them is still present. So what is the one thing we know that exists that we can see and we can undermine ourselves and defeat. It's anti-whiteism, the ideology. That's what we need to put our eyes on. More importantly, if we come together and create a people with the concepts that we teach in the Go Free Dialogic, we will have the same kind of unanimity of purpose that the anti-whites have, which means we won't all have to know each other to effectuate white positive outcomes. We can work together without ever meeting, without ever even liking each other. Maybe we wouldn't like each other. This is the power of an ideology trained into an animal, the human animal. I believe we have a spirit, but we're still in animal bodies. George Zinn is a perfect example of that unanimity of purpose. In a split second, it seems so, even Benny Johnson was talking about it, in a split second, it seems to their minds, because they don't understand what we understand here, impossible that George Zinn, in that exact moment, could decide, I want to help the assassin get away. But he absolutely can. He's every bit as anti-white as the anti-white that pulled the trigger. He absolutely can conclude that he is delighted with the anti-white outcome, and he wants to aid the anti-white that did it in a split second. He doesn't need to have a conversation with Robinson or Lance's balls off or whatever it is, Twiggs, whatever his name is. He doesn't have to have that conversation. He just has to be programmed with the same anti-whiteism. Just like you might work for a company and there is an interaction with another company or another department, and somebody does something white positive in the other company or the other department that somehow is interacting with the work that you're doing. If you are similarly white positive, you are against the victimization of Western kind, you are contending with anti-whiteism, you can build upon that white positive act. You can magnify it with whatever your wealth or power or whatever is, and you two need never know each other. That is the power that this ideology, a programming, a practice, a focus gives to a group of people. The focus is everything. The focus for George Zinn and Tyler Robinson was anti-white. The focus for the white race is like a fucking kaleidoscope on crack cocaine. Awake for 2 weeks and taking horse tranquilizers. That is the focus of the white race. Why? Because of people like Nick Fuentes. Because of so many of the cuck content creators, Benny Shapiro's out there. Because of all of them confusing and muddling the white population with what our focus should be. We would get nothing wrong when it came to white positive thoughts and behavior if our focus was on our well-being. No one would get it wrong. But when you have this multiplicity of drug-addled idiocy, kaleidoscopic nonsense, sometimes it's the Jews, or it's the Arabs, or it's the Muslims, or it's this abstraction about free speech, or it's the abstraction of guns having rights, or it's the abstraction of states' rights versus federal rights. I mean, no shit we don't work together. No shit we don't get an outcome that we can magnify in a split second. Like George Zinn. That's the lesson of George Zinn. That's the lesson that every white person, unfortunately, not every white person is going to take away from this. But you all will. You all will be empowered by this information. You want to have unanimity of purpose? It's got to be one lens, buddy, on our well-being. White positivity, end of subject. End of subject. And for all those fools out there that want to say, but what about blacks? They commit more crime, or what about they commit so much more crime? There won't be crime committed by anyone in a white positive country. You could take a group of people, and this has often come to mind before. And now I wonder if maybe we should digitally recreate this. But for me, it comes to mind. You have like a group of people, a big group, maybe several hundred standing out on a city street. And just for example, we take the Jewsburgs, and they say, you got to be able to notice because it's all the Jews. You got to notice. So what they notice when they look out at the crowd is the Jews in the crowd. Well, that's going to be a really small number, right? They're not a massive number of people, and irrespective of whether this one or that one, there are far more white people with a lot more money than Jews. So you can look out at this. It's going to be a small number. Well, in that, I'm just as a by the by, they're including Jews who are not anti-white, and that's going to be problematic for getting white people to come over. First and foremost, for getting white people to come over, because you're condemning people on the basis of their birth, and you're being hypocritical because you don't want to be condemned on the basis of your birth. It's also just completely immoral to condemn somebody on the basis of their birth, right? That's just a reality. It's immoral to do it to me. It's immoral to do it to any other group of people. Condemn them on the basis of their birth. So let's even say, though, you pull all of the Jews, which is not even possible, not even going to happen, not in your lifetime, not in anything you could ever fathom. And that's all that matters for you in your life. But then you still have this colossal group of people out there. I mean, it's barely changed. What if you notice the anti-whites? Case closed. Well, you're going to get all the Jews that are anti-white, and you're going to get all the blacks that are anti-white, and you're going to get all the Hispanics and all of the Arabs and all of the whites. Everybody who's anti-white gets noticed. So don't come to me ever with your head up your ass, sniffing on your ideology, telling me, oh, you got to notice. And if you're not noticing them, because you are the people who aren't noticing. That's the lesson of George Zinn.